Adopt Technology's The Elephant in the Room podcast brings you gigantic tech stories that inspire. These are creators, innovators, and change makers. Every episode, our guests embody one of the core values that makes Adopt so different from every other tech company. Much like an elephant, guests on this show are emotionally intelligent and ready to make a gigantic impact on the world. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Pena. Thank you so much for being here. In studio with us today is Shideh Doerr, co-founder of JabberYak, which is a social engagement platform based on 7 degrees of interest. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You are a first-generation Persian. You're a wife, a mom of 3 sons, and 1 Labradoodle.
Yes.
So you have a very busy household.
Not forget her.
But you are also an entrepreneur in this tech startup. So tell us what this is.
So JabberYak is a social engagement company. It's built on the premise of 7 interests. So in all these studies that are out there, it shows that people connect with a stranger on 1 out of 7 interests. So you're able to get your 7 interests printed on a t-shirt, an office nameplate, a badge, or a name tag, and then someone sees it and it kind of sparks that conversation. It breaks the ice. It takes the ease and the anxiety out of trying to talk to some stranger.
So tell us about your shirt. It says, so this is streaming also, so some folks are watching this, but for those just listening, it says yoga, pistons, paddling, music lover, designing, dancing, foodie.
That pretty much sums it up. So I love paddleboarding. I love yoga. I'm from Detroit. I'm a Detroit Pistons fan. I've had season tickets almost my whole life up until we moved. What else is on there? Music lover. So any type of music I love. All my kids and my husband are musically inclined. I am not. I just like to listen to it. Designing. I love designing homes, interiors, dancing, and foodie. So when someone sees this, it just kind of strikes up a conversation. And it's funny because sometimes even people who know me really well will see me wear this and like, oh, I forgot you're a Pistons fan. Didn't you used to have tickets? Or you start talking or foodie, hey, what is your favorite food? I don't think I know it. And you even connect with someone that you know so well.
I was going to say human connection.
Right.
So tell us how this idea came to be.
So my other partner, Gail Leventhal, was on a family cruise with her family. And they, usually when you go on cruises, you meet people. And nowadays, they kind of tend to keep you within your little pod and circle, your little social network that you come on the cruise with. So you're no longer sitting at a table of 10 with strangers like they used to see on Love Boat, right? And so they were walking around, and I think it was day 4 or 5 of the cruise, and she was complaining to her husband that they really hadn't met anyone or, became friends or made any connections with people. Well, her son goes to medical school and was wearing this T-shirt, and she was like, literally 5 minutes after I had that conversation with my husband, she goes, I started noticing people kept coming up to Ryan and asking him about the school and, oh, my grandson went there. Oh, I have a brother who went there. And they'd have conversations for 20, 30 minutes. And she's like, I started realizing, little things like this trigger conversations. And so they were looking for a while, her and someone else before me were looking at different prototypes of different ways to convey these 7 interests. And that's where the concept of JabberYak started really formulating about 5 years ago until we really started 3 years ago.
You spent the last 25 years prior to this in the healthcare industry, so you really made a switch.
I did. This is the first time I've switched from it. So I grew up in a household of physicians and healthcare employees. My extended family, they're all physicians, my husband, and I have my master's in healthcare administration. But over the years of my career, I have been with some of the large consulting firms. I have been with large healthcare corporations here in Arizona. I had a medical device company. I was an administrator for a large group, an institute. And I think over time, you start learning that you take things that you learn from one business to another. And even within healthcare, there's so many different aspects of it. Healthcare started evolving and changing, and I got the itch to broaden my horizons and try something new. And I think you don't ever grow and expand as a person or in your career until you get outside your comfort zone and you try something new. So I thought this is a great place to bring all the principles of business and strategy and conversation, from the healthcare industry, bring all that into JabberYak and try and see if we can engage people and use that knowledge in a different industry.
So talk about the technology behind it.
So surprisingly enough, I can't tell you how many times people ask me, oh, so you have a t-shirt company? I don't have a t-shirt company. There is a huge brain behind JabberYak. So we have a large team of developers who've worked tirelessly over the last 2 years to develop a system and a pod. And it's not a t-shirt building pod, although some people like to say it is. Basically, when we contract with someone, we get the information of their employees or their attendees or their family members, depending on what it is. We upload it into the system, and the system automatically will generate an email that's unique for that person. So they get an invitation email to click on a link to go into the pod. Once they're in the pod, it knows who they are, it's got all their information, and it walks them through making their selection for their 7 interests. And we have preset categories, or you can customize them as well, whatever works best for the client. And then all this data is back there and we keep it for them. So at the end, when everyone's done, so for instance, we have a large conference coming up and there's 150 attendees. So once we have all their information, we'll compile all the data and we give it to the planner. So they'll know who their audience is. They'll know who their people are. We're doing it for a large ski resort. We're doing their name tags and the same thing. We're going to compile all the data and we give it to them so they actually learn a little bit more about who their employees are. Hey, there are a lot of coffee drinkers. Maybe we'll do coffee gift cards. Oh, a lot of people like Pilates. Let's give a Pilates gift card. Cater it a little bit more, make it more specific.
So tell us a little bit more about how that technology is used and how you're thinking up new ideas.
So when we started doing the conferences, it was just the badge with the 7 interests that you would wear in a lanyard, which is great, conversation starter. And as we've progressed and evolved, what we've added to it is you can put the QR code. So there's a unique QR code in the back of the badge, and you can scan it with your phone, and it takes you through the entire venue. You can look at the map of the conferences. You can look at the schedule to see who's talking where. Whatever the conference planner wants you to have access to, you can access the QR codes. But then the other thing we've done with the social ice-breaking piece of it is we've created a scavenger hunt. We're collecting all the data on everybody. So the system automatically will take the questions and comes up with 10 or 15 questions, and we'll do it with a phone, and you scan a QR code and it takes you to the scavenger hunt. And then you have to find those 10 or 15 people.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, on the scavenger hunt to go and find and talk to. And then the winner gets, sometimes it's been an iPad, sometimes it's a gift card. So it's fun, unique prizes.
What is involved in the process in creating that next step for the technology implementation? Is it you and your partner? Do you have a big team? Who's involved in that think tank?
So it's me and my partner. We also have a third partner, actually, who is more of our silent investor partner. But he comes with a large tech background, a lot of tech startups. So whenever we have an idea like that, the 3 of us kind of come together and we just have a powwow for hours of how do we do this and how do we create this? And then we get on the phone with the development team and we start trying to figure out from a coding aspect, what do we need to do to lock this in and kind of make it all cohesive so there's no break in the technology. So if something goes wrong, the system's still up and running, we can fix it really quickly.
Have you had any troubles with, sometimes an idea seems like a great idea, but then actually making it work and work well is a different story?
So I would be lying if I said yes. Honestly, we've been super lucky. We've got a great team and everything's really thought through a lot before we ever implement anything. There are lots of prototypes that are made. There's so much testing that goes through. We test everything on iPads, on laptops, on Macs. We do it on iPhones, on Android. So we're testing the heck out of everything before we launch anything to make sure that we don't have the bugs.
How many people are on your team?
So our immediate team right now, there are 5 of us, and then we have a development team of about 10.
Do you hope or anticipate growing the number of people who you're employing?
Absolutely. I mean, I see us hopefully bringing all the development in-house and building that team up and being able to constantly improve it, just like you do with your phone and you have constant updates. I mean, this system, as the pod keeps growing and the database gets bigger, we do need to continually do updates and keep up with the technology. I mean, we got to get better and better.
Do you see this as an example of using tech for good?
I do. I think, there's so many aspects to use it. There are a lot of nonprofits that are looking and talking with us about trying to implement it to break the ice and do icebreakers with them. And so I think it gets people out of their shell. And I think in a time when we're dealing with a lot of mental health issues right now, and this is the perfect tool to get people out of the shell, get them talking, engage them.
What has been the reception? And, how have you been enjoying watching people connect?
So it has been a lot more fun, I think, than I thought it was. And all the time, I think it makes it worth it, all the hard work to see people engage and get to know each other. We did a conference in August, and it was for a lot of event planners, and it was their industry conference. And to see them engage with one another, and the feedback we got was overwhelming. They kept saying, wow, we've been with these people in this organization for over a decade, and there are things we've learned about each other today that we never knew about each other before. And it's so great. And I think especially coming out of the COVID social distancing that we've been through for the last year and a half, 2 years, it's really been nice to see people have a tool. Almost, I don't want to say it's a crutch because that sounds not good, but it's something to give them a little bit, to take that edge off, that anxiety of coming back into the world and socializing again. We're all itching to do it. We've fallen out of practice a little bit.
Do you think, too, right now, because of the divisiveness that a lot of people feel, that it's nice to bring a sense of there are commonalities? You don't have to agree about everything, but hey, I'm from Detroit also. You find something in common and suddenly that gap gets a little smaller.
Right. Totally. And I mean, there's times even when you see something on someone's shirt and maybe it's not something you're interested in, but it's intriguing. It's something you don't see every day or something you've been curious about. And it even bridges that gap of the differences and makes a difference, a commonality that strikes up conversation between two strangers.
As I said off the top of the interview, you're first-generation Persian American whose parents immigrated to the United States in 1970 for your dad to do his training here, and they stayed when the revolution began. So what did you learn from your parents that made you fearless?
Adaptability. My parents came here with an 18-month-old baby and 2 suitcases, no support system, no nothing, didn't know the language as much as, a lot of people do. And they had a beautiful life back home with their families, and they came here to start over. And no matter what came their way, they always prevailed and succeeded. And I think, seeing that has made me fearless. It said, if my parents can come to a foreign country and make it and build this beautiful life for me and my siblings, then there's no reason I should waste this opportunity. And I think the culture too is so cohesive and supportive that seeing that has also helped.
What obstacles have you faced in your professional career?
So I think sometimes, I hate playing this card, but I do think sometimes being a woman and breaking through barriers has been, I don't want to say it's impossible because it's not. It's happened. It's happening. But it is a little tricky. It's hard sometimes to get people to take you seriously. But then once you prove yourself, it's all easy from there. So, honestly, that's the only obstacle. Maybe that and balancing work-life balance with the kids.
Yeah, that can be tricky.
That's probably even maybe more so.
3 kids and a Labradoodle.
And a husband. So
and a husband.
4 boys. Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps and maybe launch a startup or in particular in the tech world?
So, before this, I was not really well-versed in tech. I mean, EMR, electronic medical records, I'm well-versed in that. The coding aspect in that, I am not. And here I am. So I don't think there should be anything that holds you back. And the only way you're going to know if your idea would succeed is if you give it a try. I mean, what's the worst case scenario is look for avenues. There's so many avenues out there for people who want to do startup tech companies who financially maybe don't have the backing to do it on their own. There's a lot of seed money out there. Search it out, look it up, Google, go to your local city board and ask them, and don't give up on the ideas. I mean, there's great ideas every day that are generating great new tools and products out there. So I hope people continue to just strive to be outside the box.
Do you ever sit back and, I mean, you're a successful woman, but as you said, you spent 25 years in an industry that you know well, and that's more comfortable for you, and you took a risk. Do you ever sit back and go, man, I did that? Or why did I do that?
I don't think so. Only because I feel like every step in life I could do that, right? With getting married and having children and moving from Detroit to Arizona, not knowing anyone. Like, I feel like every step in life has been wow, look what we did, or wow, we made it. And so I just take in each moment and enjoy it and just focus on what's in front of me and moving forward, and I don't know, breathe through it all. You got to breathe through it all. Right. What do you hope for your company? What's next? So, we're taking off and we're growing now. I think we started going, we launched, we were supposed to launch pre-COVID. We had to hold back a little, and it's been slow, but it's starting to pick up. So we are still working through some bugs, but it's been good. And I see us growing bigger and bigger. We want to stay local. We want to employ locally. We want to support Phoenix and Scottsdale where we are. So I just continue to see us grow and maybe add more things to our service offering than what we have now, taking feedback and keep growing. What words of inspiration do you have that you like to share with people? I don't think there's a limit. And that's what I tell my kids every day is be you, be true to yourself, do what feels right for you, and don't ever second guess yourself. And that's all I can say really in a nutshell is just you have an idea, you have something you want to do, go get a chance. You get one shot to live this life, make it the best life you can live. Well, you're a rock star. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. I was also thinking with the shirt, it's kind of interesting just to reflect on what you would choose for yourself, to right. say about yourself. That's kind of an interesting exercise. I'm sitting here thinking like yoga. Yes. I mean, like I like to think about what I would put on there, the 7 things. Well, I think we're going to have to send you guys all a link and you guys can create your own shirts and then wear them and see what the reaction is too. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you. To talk about what we just heard, Andy Cottrell from Adopt Technologies. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
You just watched and listened to the episode, and it was so inspirational. What was your takeaway?
I think what I really took away from it is just how, as a woman in tech myself, you have to prove yourself when you start out. Because as a woman in tech, nobody really takes you serious when you first start. You've got a group full of guys that are all used to just doing it themselves and without any help. And then they get this woman in here that obviously can't know what they know. And then once you prove yourself, like she said, then you're in and then it's easy and you gain all this respect. And I think that I have done that at Adopt Technologies, and they're really starting to focus on bringing more women into Adopt Technologies because they realize the potential and how that diversity can really impact your environment and your culture and your team.
And Adopt Technologies wanted to sponsor this podcast and share these stories to help spread the message of diversity and inclusion in tech.
Absolutely. And I think that says a lot because when I first started at Adopt, I was the only girl on the client support team. I was the only girl in the technical portion of it. And it was just a room full of guys. So
you're like, I'm here.
Yes. So, just being in this environment and then them learning that, it is nice to have another voice here. Has really inspired me to, do more and be more for Adopt.
One of the things that I think is super cool about this particular series is that Adopt Technologies is lifting up other companies, especially startups like the one we just heard about. Tell us what specifically you do to help those companies make sure that they're safe as they grow.
Yeah, it's really important to have a strong IT posture, whether it's in regards to security or infrastructure. And that's what our company does, is we are the experts in our field. So we make sure that they have a strong cybersecurity posture and a strong infrastructure to work from.
And that's important as a company like the one she was just talking about, it's great to hear that she's growing so fast, right?
Absolutely.
But you want to grow safely.
Yes, absolutely. And when you're growing that fast, it's hard to keep an eye on all of the different things that can happen in your IT world. And that's why we're here.
Thank you so much for being here to break it all down for us. And thanks to all of you for listening and watching. I'm Carrie Pena.